Hey guys, what's up? Pixels here. In today's video, I'm giving you my ultimate guide to playing Leader Ashe on Evil Dead the game. Overall, Leader Ashe is a great character. He gets no damage debuffs like, other characters do and different classes. Leaders have just the flat, damage percentage from every weapon and stuff like that. They get no buffs from that, other than from their auras as well. But that kind of leads them to being more viable choice of pick now in the game because they've had the pink fuck upgrades, some aura buffs. Overall they've been getting loads of buffs lately. Anyways, let's jump straight into this. The first thing I'm going to do is designing his build. So I've got a few builds on my channel. If you guys want to go check those out, you can. In this video, I'm just going to quickly go through a build and explain a few things on why I picked this and what you should look for when you're designing a build on Leader Ashe. So the first thing that I do is do Great Influence. I usually just go for 10 meters. 10 meters seems fine for me. If you have any spare skill points at the end of designing a build, you can buff this up to 15 meters if you want. But for me, 15 meters is kind of overkill because the way I play, I tend to stay next to my damage dealers in anyways. So I don't really stray away from my teammates too often when I'm playing Leader because, leaders can tend to be targeted quite a lot. I mean, they have just had an upgrade where they get 4 dodges instead of 3, and I'll explain how you get the 4 dodges instead of 3 now as well. I usually just leave this at 10 meters. That's usually more than enough for me. Cardio can be good in some situations, but I usually just leave this to 5% because the only reason I have this is just to help out with looting at the start of the game, and you kind of got to spend points into this anyways, so that's the main thing I go for. So the next thing is Artful Dodger. No matter what leader you're playing, you want to max this out. So if you get 2 and 2 in Artful Dodger, you will get 4 dodges with maximum pink fuck upgrades during the game. For those of you who don't know what pink fuck is, it is the pink bottles that come out of chests. It is called pink F in the game, but it's actually supposed to be pink fuck, which is what it's called in the TV show. Anyways, so like I said, you need to max this out in order to get the 4 dodges, so be sure to choose that when you're designing a leader build. The next thing that I go for is obviously just industrial strength, buffing up my health. Leaders can get quite tanky with health now, especially with some health upgrades, so you can roughly get about 1,500 health maxed out with pink fuck. So without that, it's not that less without the pink fuck upgrades. So I don't see industrial as a priority anymore since I have 4 dodges. I don't really need the extra health, but I just put it in there just to tank myself up just a little bit. So the primary thing with Leader Ashe is balance bar damage. So I can leave this about 10%. I'm happy with that. If you want to go overkill, you can put an extra 5%. But for me, I think 10% works out relatively fine. And the primary thing here is going Devastating Force. Devastating Force allows you to do finishes a lot earlier because the higher damage weapon that you have, the faster you can do a finisher because depending on when you break the balance bar and the weapon that you have, if you have the higher damage output, it will allow you to do a finisher a lot earlier. The finishers are the red skulls, and you can do special moves as well on this guy, but be wary if you do finishes on this guy, then please make sure that you do it when they have the red skull on, so that way you can buff up the aura. So that's basically what I look for when I do a Leader Ashe build, and then the rest is always up to you. For the main thing that I like to do is I like to buff up my Master of Influence. So I'll explain this for people because a lot of people are obviously new to the game and some people might not understand this. So the 20% here is not additive, it is multiplied to the aura skill. So when it says here strengthens the effect of your aura, if you come over to El Jefe, which is his his passive aura buff that he gives to the team, you see it says 15% and 20% fear resistance, so that's multiplied by 20%. So the damage will go up by an extra 3%. And then the fear resistance will go up by an extra 4% as well. And, that's how it works out. However, it gets a bit more complicated with El Jefe, so I'm going to explain this. So at El Jefe Grande, when I said, you do the finishes for this guy, this is the main thing why the aura effect improvement is 100%. So, you do 100%. So you're basically doubling the aura effect that he gives as standard. So basically, obviously, he's going to go up to 18% and 24% with Master of Influence here. So if you double that, then he's obviously going to go up to 36%, and then he's going to go up to 44%. So that's why I think Great Influence works well on this guy. It's only extra percentage, but percentages on aura and aura buffs, especially leaders, definitely help out a lot. And then the next thing I tend to go for is fast forward. The reason I do fast forward is because it speed through objectives really fast. This guy is absolutely disgusting. You have 4 dodges, you can spam finishes really well with him, and then whilst you're spamming finishes, you can really fuck with a demon by, if you're on an objective and having fast forward, you will burn through that really fast as well while spamming finishes, and you're basically trying to make yourself like invincible and speed through and speed running through objectives as well. So it works out really well for him. So this is kind of the build that I run with Leader Ashe. You know, if I have a spare point, I'll put it in either balance bar, or I'll probably just go up here and just put it in a great influence. There is some other routes you can go with this guy as well. You know, if you don't want to speed through objectives, you've got 4 points spare here. You know, you can go for 10% in stopping power, and then you can buff up your range damage as well. That'll totally work for this guy. But me personally, I like to have the extra speed through objectives for my team. But it's entirely up to you. What I will say is, if you have the range buffs, it will help out against possessed units because you can dodge back and then shoot them. So, you know, you're getting an extra 25% on your range damage there, which works really well on this guy. But yeah, that's how you design an El Jefe build. And now I'm going to tell you how to play him. So the primary goal on El Jefe is doing finishes. And, you know, with El Jefe Grande being a thing, it says dismemberment and finishes. So don't pay attention to dismemberment. Dismemberment is very RNG in the game. It's very random if you do get a dismemberment, and it won't always work. So the main thing with this guy is smacking balance bars and getting finishes, so that way you can buff up your aura for the team. And the main thing about doing finishes is that you have invincibility frames, so that means you can't take any damage whilst you're doing a finisher as well, which is really good. The next way that I play him, so like I said, the primary goal is doing finishes. This is mainly hitting lights on basic AI units, or, you know, the elite AI units. If it's a possessed unit, however, I will tend to do heavy damage, or I will do range damage. I will not spam lights on a possessed unit most of the time, because you're not really going to do much damage there. I mean, you can try and help them to drain their balance bar a little bit, but honestly, hitting them with like heavy attacks with the lumberjack axe works out really well too. The next thing is using ability. So you got to time his ability is not great. You know, the active ability where you knock back the enemies and drain a little bit of balance bar. It's not fantastic, to be honest. However, there is certain situations where this active ability really does help out. Primarily Book phase. If there's like a crowd around the Book, it staggers them back, so it helps out there. Another instance is, you know, trying to get a revive on a teammate. You know, sometimes they can be swarmed by quite a few AI units or something. Hitting that, triggering that can actually help you get a revive off sometimes, if you do time it right. The main thing that I use it for, however, is on possessed units. So if a possessed basic or a possessed elite is attacking the team, I'll pay attention to the little white bar under their health bar. And if I think it's just below half, that's usually when I trigger my active ability, because then it's a free stun instantly on that unit. So that does help out with that. So you kind of got to time it right with his active ability. Don't go, you know, if you're fighting a possessed unit 1v1, don't ever use this ability, because it takes you in a stun animation, basically meaning like you can't move out of it. So if you're doing that ability, they're basically going to get free hits on you, and that balance bar damage isn't really going to be that worth it. So the main thing for me is to time it right during, you know, combat situations, you know, if there's loads of AI around in that type of scenario. So be sure to not spam this ability as much as possible, because it's, you know, people have said, well, why don't you use your El Jefe ability? It's like, it's only good in certain situations. Yeah, it has a low cooldown, but most of the time, if I'm spamming this during fights and the objectives and stuff, if I'm constantly using this and I've got a possessed basic on my ass, the demon player is going to get a lot of free hits on me. So, like I said, the primary thing is iframes on this guy. Obviously, just doing finishes. So yeah, mainly attacking with lights to spam invincibility frames is the primary thing here. And like how to play him overall and how I position myself. The main thing that I do is I stand near my damage dealers on my team, mainly warriors. I will try and keep up with the hunters sometimes as well, because the hunters do get benefits from my damage buff too. But yeah, mainly warriors. Warriors work well with El Jefe, like really well, especially with the fear resistance, because warriors can tend to get possessed pretty easily. So if you have the fear resistance there, it can really help out with the warriors being possessed too, especially if you're going to be, you know, spamming the finishes. And even then, the fear resistance, if they get a demon dash or if they run into a trap or something, their fear level's not going to go up by a lot. If they do get triggered in your like yellow aura. Okay, just to expand on how I play this guy a little bit, while I'm looting, I pick up every ammo type. That'd be long range, you know, handgun ammo, special weapon ammo. I max this out as much as I can. And what you can do with the leader skill tree actually is buff up your deep pockets for ammo so that you can carry an extra 15 bullets as well. But however, like I said, I don't really go for that much unless I am trying to focus on range damage a little bit on El Jefe. But the main thing for me is picking up every ammo type for my team, whether that be, you know, a hunter using handgun ammo, for myself using long gun ammo. Even special weapon ammo can work well on Ashe. We'll get into what weapons that you should be looking out for while you're looting as well. Pick up coolers for yourself and the support. Primarily, you probably want to stack up to 3 coolers, right? And most of the time, you won't really need to use these on yourself. If you do get the dodging down well on this game, you can avoid a lot of hits and you won't take a lot of damage. And, you know, you can rely on your support to heal you up as much as possible. However, if you pick up shield or the amulets, don't use them on yourself unless you have, you know, say you have 3 out already and you find an extra one while you're looting. That's fine to use one and pick up that. But primarily, I always just stack 3 on my leader Ashe. I don't use them on him. What I will do is drop them at the book phase or during objectives for my warriors that I see that have like low health, because warriors get the most benefits out of amulets. They get 2 shield bars as well. You know, sometimes even drop them for a support character can help out too. But using them on leader is like a big waste for me. I don't think it's really good. Even with reinforced amulet, shield length increase, and pink fuck upgrades, it's just, you know, it's not really that beneficial in terms of the way of like designing a build around a leader. For me, it just doesn't make any sense to have that. So while you're looting, make sure you do that. So we're going to tell you what weapons to look out for while you're looting with El Jefe as well. So weapons overall, no matter what game you're playing or who you're playing against, Lumberjack Axe is a priority. The main thing about the Lumberjack Axe is that it can actually trigger dismemberment as well, so then you won't actually have to do finishes to get your El Jefe Grande buff. But the main thing for me is that with the Lumberjack Axe is it has hyper armor. So if you don't know what hyper armor is, it basically means you can't be interrupted if you start your attacks. It's the only weapon that has this at like the best level in the game. There are some other weapons that do have certain timing with hyper armor, but honestly the Lumberjack Axe is the best weapon in the game. So be sure that you pick this up. And, you know, what I do is I use light attacks on the basic AI units or the elite AI units. But possessed units, the Lumberjack Axe really shines here because it you can smack heavy attacks into a possessed unit. Primarily, you got to kind of time this right, because you don't want to be 1v1 hitting a possessed unit with a heavy attack. The main thing I say is only really do this if you have your teammates around you. You can kind of if you time it right, hit a heavy and then a dodge and a heavy and then a dodge, you can kind of outplay a 1v1 situation on possessed units. Also depend on what possessed unit it is. So the main thing, like I said, is going for the boss units when you've got your team around you. Using heavy attacks on that is really good. But yeah, it's overall the best weapon in the game, and it's really good for breaking balance bars, doing dismemberment. So this is really going to work well with El Jefe because, like I said, it will constantly buff up his El Jefe Grande, whether that's doing finishes or dismemberment as well. The mace is decent on this guy as well. It's just a one-handed weapon. However, it does pack a massive punch on the balance bars. So hitting lights with this is really good too. It'll drain a balance bar, then you can literally just spam finishes on all the evil units in the game. It's really, really good for that. The main thing with this is the heavy attacks. It has such a big target radius as well that you'll notice your character kind of just swooping about 10 yards trying to hit something on the head with the mace. So if you do a heavy attack with that, be wary when you do it. It can put you in a lot of danger sometimes. and you won't, like, you know, if you come to the attack cooldown at the end of the combo or something, sometimes you can't dodge out of that. So be wary when you're using the mace, but it does work really well on this guy too. This is one of the weapons that I mainly look out for. And the other one is the sword. The sword is really good too, hitting light attacks with that. There's certain combinations you can go with the sword as well. It's not worth mentioning because a lot of people won't be that experienced in the game. But main thing is with swords, I just do light attacks. Sometimes I will do a heavy attack if it's a possessed unit, but honestly, the sword, you can get knocked out of your heavy attack pretty easily. That's why I like the lumberjack axe so much. It's the only weapon in the game that actually does not get interrupted during attacks most of the time. So the ranged weapons that I look for is a boomstick, hunting rifle, and double barrel. And the reason why I look for these is that, you know, they have really good damage output and really good balance bar damage too. The hunting rifle, not so much, but the shotguns work really well on El Jefe. But the hunting rifle can tend to trigger dismemberment sometimes, so that's why I put it in there. Even a revolver is really good on this guy too. But the main weapon that I look for is a boomstick or a double barrel, because they really help out during those balance bars. Especially if I use, you know, the boomstick or a double barrel, and then I use my active ability. Sometimes I can stun a unit really fast as well. So I mainly look out for those for the ranged weapons. What I will say is there is some weird weapons around El Jefe that work pretty decently, but sometimes they're not worth going for. The melee weapons, picking up the syringes, it actually works really well on this guy for some bizarre reason. If you pick up the syringes and use heavy attacks on them, which, you know, they trigger pretty, like the heavy attacks go pretty fast. They can actually trigger dismemberment every 2 hits, which is very bizarre, and I think it's just a bug in the weapon at the moment. So I'm not sure why that happens, but if you pick up the syringes on this guy and use heavy attacks, you can trigger dismemberment pretty fast with him. But, you know, like I said, the main thing for me is I don't look for dismemberment, I look for finishes, so I don't usually pick those up. Especially if I'm playing solo queue, I'll never pick syringes up. I'll stick with a lumberjack axe or a mace, thank you. The sledgehammer can work pretty well too. The sledgehammer's, you know, sort of decent if you use light attacks. Using heavies on the sledgehammer is very, very dangerous, and this thing just tries to target everything. I really hate that. Also, the shovel using light attacks. The shovel is pretty good at light attacks and spamming finishes too. But to be honest, the mace for me just outperforms both of these balance bar weapons. The reason why I'm not suggesting the chainsaw, by the way, if you notice, he does start with a chainsaw. I'll just talk about that for a second. You don't use the chainsaw in this game, no matter who you're playing. It's decent for actually spamming finishes sometimes because it does have a decent balance bar stat damage on it, but it has terrible hit detection, and a lot of the time you'll get knocked out of your attacks if you it's like literally the worst heavy attack weapon in the game as well. If you try, it's like the animations on it are too slow, you get knocked out of them too easily, so avoid using the chainsaw unless you want to just play, you know, Ash and you want to use the chainsaw and the boomstick. That's totally fine, you can do that. But you know, if you want to get really good with this character, you're really going to be limiting yourself if you like keep using a chainsaw. So okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about, and it's probably the last of this guide for El Jefe, is the pink fuck upgrades. So as I've mentioned, you know, earlier in the video when I was going over the stamina, you know, the main thing is going stamina 4 out of 4 at the start of the game. The reason why stamina is so important so early on is, you know, looting, basically. That's one of the main reasons. It's really good for looting early on, you know, sprinting around the place, collecting the map pieces, collecting more ammo, you know, supplies, that good stuff. But not only that, it gives you 4 dodges as well. So if the demon does find you early on and you've got your 4 dodges, you're basically laughing because most of the time you can just cheese your way around a demon until they run out of infernal energy, and most of the time you won't even have to attack them with the 4 dodges. But you know, you gotta kind of just time it right on how to dodge, and you know, that's all just a learning curve more than something I can tell you on how to do it. What I will say is if you get found early on with Elagos and it's a power possessed, so the difference between a possession on Elagos and a power possession is they'll have like this red, so a normal possession will just be red. The power possessed will have like this red glowing effect coming off them as well when they're running around the place, so you have to kind of look out for that. It's hard to judge sometimes, but it's best to avoid the power possession right now because it is absolutely devastating. It's really broken, I would say, in my opinion. I think it's like one of the worst design things in this game because it actually makes a basic unit more powerful than Elagos, who is the boss unit. It's just very bizarre. So be sure to watch out for those. However, you know, against Plaguebringer, Warlord, Necromancer, having maxed out staminas will going to work really well against those two. And it does work out a little bit against Elagos, but most of the time they will catch up to you and fuck you over. So the main thing against the Elagos basics is that I tend to try and just drive away in a car and try and get to a teammate or something like that, because, you know, it's safety in numbers against an Elagos. Okay, so the next one is melee. So I like to buff up my melee damage as fast as possible as well. Like I said, I want to be spamming those iframes really fast. And, you know, maxing out melee, you actually get an extra 20%, I think, overall melee damage. And you get a little speed buff. I think it's 5% on the attack speed. So this works out really well for the Lumberjack Axe and the Mace as well. So that way you can, you know, spam finishes as much as possible too. You know, the next thing I go for is fear, maxing out fear on this guy. The main reason I go the fear route is because demons can tend to get in, like, if they get enough traps down or if they demon dash you, they can get your fear level quite high. You know, leaders do have like a natural fear resistance where it's, you know, they have a higher fear threshold, so they can't get possessed so easily. But if you max out the fear on this guy, combined with his fear resistance on his aura buff, it does make him really hard to possess. And obviously, if he doesn't get possessed, that means the demon can't get, obviously, the free XP or the free demon level XP upgrades from possession, because they tend to get quite a decent amount of XP when they possess a survivor. So trying to make yourself unpossessable is really good on this guy too. And then the next thing is health. I buff up my health on this guy just to make him a little bit more tanky. So then I have 4 dodges. And then if I do get hit, I do have quite a lot of health there too. So those are the Pinkfuck upgrades. The next thing I suggest is going for range. Do not buff up your shield. There's just no need for it unless you have like an excessive amount of Pinkfuck. Pinkfuck on shields on leaders are just not worth it, honestly. I've tried it out multiple times and it just does not work out for me at all. It just feels like I waste a lot of resources for the team as well. But anyways, guys, this has been my ultimate guide to El Jefe or Leader Ash on Evil Dead the game. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you find it helpful. If you have any questions, leave me a comment down below about this character. I'll do my best to get back to you on them. We're trying to get some guides out for every character because I know there's a lot of new people coming to the game, so I'm trying to get people to better understand their roles as playing the certain characters in the game too. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hit that like button, hit that sub button for more future Evil Dead content. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I've been Pixels, you're my awesome viewers. I'll catch you guys in the next one.